one, beats all. Okay, I've taken up paddle surfing, right?
Yes.
Well, I wanted to be able to practice on my lake this summer, paddle around on the surfboard. So I went to buy a surfboard, and Minnesota requires you to license them.
Oh, yeah. I went to buy a kayak, and they tried to make me fill out a license form, and I refused to do it here in Texas.
But a surfboard, unbelievable. And then worse than that, Alex, you're required to wear a life jacket.
They're now trying to make people put dogs in seatbelts and have dogs wear life jackets. The nanny state is here.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I mean, can you imagine in California or Mexico where the waves get 10 to 15 feet, you're not required to wear a life jacket. You get laughed off the beach if you were a surfer with a life jacket on. Minnesota, they don't get a wave over 2 feet unless a big pontoon goes by.
What you do is you order a surfboard online or drive over to Wisconsin. You gotta run for.
I already beat it, Alex. I beat the system. You know how I did it?
How?
I gave him my Mexican address. So and the guy was great. He said, "Look, if you give me a Minnesota address, I have to license you."
Yeah, but what about wanting? It wasn't even the law. They said, "Well, the police want you to do this." A little bitty one-man kayak at the Academy place, everything's got to be tracked, but the banker's laundering all the drug money.
Yeah, exactly. No, I couldn't believe it. You have to register, and get this, the surfboards have no serial numbers on them. So how would they even know it's the correct surfboard?
No, it's just pure, they want everything tracked.
That or they want your money.
Oh, that too. Of course.
I mean, and you know how the law is up here, Alex? Anything over 9.5 feet must be licensed. So if your kids went out and took a couple of 2x4s and built a raft, if it's over 9.5 feet, you got to go register and license it.
I wouldn't put up with that. Well, you didn't put up with that.
I mean, I was stunned. I started laughing. I said, can you imagine if Laird Hamilton came up here to give a paddle surfing lesson and they'd have to put a life jacket on him? A guy who surfs 40 to 50-foot waves in the ocean is considered the greatest big wave surfer in the world, and he would have to put a life jacket on up here.
Well, they're banning 16-ounce drinks now in New York, and talking about $2,000 fines in Miami if you don't recycle right. I mean, how bad's this nanny state going to get?
Oh, it's going to get worse because we're not standing up to it, and that'll lead right into my book, Who's in Charge? The Democrats and the Republicans.
We're going to cover the book coming up, the lawsuit against the guy that said that he punched you out when you have the owners of the bar, other witnesses, none of this ever happened. The lawsuit goes forward there, what's happening with the TV show, a lot more. Jessie Ventura is our guest. His book is available discounted right now out of the gates at Infowars.com. People are really sick of both parties, Democrats and Republicans. No more gangs in government. The waterfront to cover here, TSA, nanny state, weaponized drones, your lawsuit against the Navy SEAL that lied about you and why you went ahead with that. All of it is coming up. Rand Paul, there's so many issues. But let's get into your new book. I think it's one of your best. Where did you come up with the name? And for folks that are listening right now, what does the book break down?
Well, the name, I don't recall who it was. It might have been Senator Dean Barkley, who I appointed to fill the Wellstone seat after Senator Wellstone died. It may have come from him or whatever. But somebody at some point in my life, within the last decade, referred to the two parties as the Democrats and the Republicans. And I thought it was so perfect because when you look, okay, let's go to the Crips and the Bloods, the two street gangs that we use their names. Well, the Crips colors are blue. Well, what's a Democratic state? It's a blue state, right? The Bloods, naturally, their color is red. affected by these two gangs, the Democrats and the Republicans. And so I wrote the book because I wanted to expose how horrible it is in light of the Supreme Court's decision that money is free speech and that corporations have the same rights as an individual. It's now completely out of hand, Alex. These corporations are funneling so many millions of dollars into these campaigns, and these two parties have created a system that is based completely on bribery. If you bribe them, you will get what you want. If you don't, well, you're just out of luck then. Now, what troubles me a great deal is that if we commit a bribe offense in the private sector, you go to jail. And yet our whole political system is based upon bribery. And, and money is free speech. Well, I'd love to see the next bank robber, when he goes to trial, say, well, Your Honor, I was simply exercising my right of free speech. Because after all, our Supreme Court said that money is free speech. And so clearly our courts are failing us. The Democrats and Republicans, the legislative branch is failing us. The president and the executive branch is failing us. And the fourth branch, the unwritten branch of government, the media, is failing us. Why? Because the media, it was interesting, I saw Dan Rather on the other day. And if you'll recall, he got fired because he reported on George Bush the kid, his service record. Well, every bit of it was true, and Dan Rather got fired for telling the truth. And the other thing, the point Rather made was, back then there were probably 40 media outlets giving us information. Today you're down to about 4 corporations that control all the media in the United States. And that's dangerous, because they're the corporate, and that's the definition of fascism. The corporations are controlling our government. They're controlling our media. If you read the works of General Smedley Butler, the 2-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, the most decorated Marine in history, he died in the 40s. Smedley Butler said, I didn't fight for the American people. I fought for the United Fruit Corporation. When they didn't get cooperation in South and Central America, they sent in the Marines to get it.
And that's what your book breaks down. And you're right. I mean, the Crips and Bloods might kill 500 people or less a year. I was looking up some of the crime statistics. It was more than 1,000 a year or so during the peak in the mid and late 1980s. The gangs that run our country are militarizing the police, federalizing him, torturing people, passing the NDAA, saying they'll kill citizens when they want, saying they'll kill U.S. citizens with weaponized drones inside the U.S. They're taxing the daylights out of us. They're spying on us without warrants and just admitting it. Bill Gates is coming out with bracelets for students that will determine emotional cognitive response, tracking their waves, their brain waves. I mean, this is like a science fiction nightmare. And the Democrips and Republicans got caught insider trading, as you know, Governor.
Sure.
And they said, oh, it's legal for us. And then you've got Legrand over in the IMF saying she's exempt from taxes, but Greece needs to pay more. I mean, we've got a criminal class running wild. How do we reverse it? I know the book addresses that. What's your ideas to stop these people?
Well, the first thing we could do, the most important thing for anyone that wants to strike out as a patriot against where our government's going today, stop voting for them. That's the simple thing you can do. Quit voting for Democrats, Republicans. I am going to fully endorse my former colleague, Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico. He's a terrific man. He has the endorsement of the Libertarian Party, and he will get my vote. I will campaign relentlessly for him, because Ron Paul apparently is going to end it at the end of the Republican convention. I don't hear any word at all that he's going to go independent at all. The Libertarians made their move already. And so I will support Governor Johnson completely. He's quit the Republican Party because they wouldn't even allow him to debate or even participate because he wasn't the chosen one. And let me add, for people so they realize something, recall and go back to when the Obama-McCain election took place, and of course President Obama won. Immediately upon that, started seeing ads on television about the Mormon religion. Remember those?
Yes.
All over TV, we started getting influx of the
giant billboards. Giant.
I'm also a Mormon.
Yeah, giant billboards too.
Oh yeah. Well, that was to prepare us. They already had Romney picked out at that point. The Republican, all this debates was baloney. Always remember this: you don't pick your president; the two gangs do. You'll get a gang member from one side and a gang member from the other side, and then you're expected to choose which one of those gang members you want to be the president.
And they are a gang.
We can now change that and vote for Governor Johnson to be our next president.
Governor Ventura, I think this is an excellent idea that you have to really try to brand things as the Republicans being the Bloods and the Democrats being the Crips. It's really starting to get political traction out there, and I think that's why you told me off air you're running into a lot of censorship. You're having your interviews cut short or canceled. We're going to talk about that. But since we got into the 2012 race, Ron Paul is not as hardcore in a lot of issues now. Rand came out and endorsed Mitt Romney. His father did not endorse in the presidential election. Of course, McCain. This is a big departure. People are upset about that. What's your take on it?
Well, how do you not endorse your own father? I mean, Ron Paul hasn't officially left the race. They haven't even had their convention yet. So my view is that, the Tea Party's phony. I cover that in this book. They've been taken over by the Koch brothers. What maybe started off as a good idea, then you ended up with Glenn Beck, Sarah Palin, and all them. The same as the Wall Street movement is trying to be co-opted by the Democrats. Well, these movements, you can't allow that to happen, and that is typical gang warfare. The gangs will absorb any other gang that comes into their territory. So both of these parties act just like the street gangs do.
Well, that's what politics was in Rome. I mean, they were literal street gangs.
Yeah, well, that's what you have here now, between these two. And the American people, I can't tell them enough, don't vote for Democrats or Republicans. Don't vote. Hell, I'd vote for the communists before I'd vote for them.
Well, they're bankster run as well, Jesse, if you go to the Ford Foundation. But exactly, they're trying to control every angle of this. What do you think Rand Paul was thinking endorsing Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney is financed by the very same people that Obama is? I mean, that's the real gang, are these big mega banks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, they're not responsible for anything. We can't even know now who the amounts of money and who they come from. Here's the thing I have, Alex, and I know it sounds silly, but it's very good. I think all presidential candidates should be required to wear NASCAR racing suits. And I say that because when you look at, like, Jimmy Johnson, the great NASCAR racer, you can see all his sponsors right in front of you because he has patches.
Yeah, that means wear it on your sleeve.
Exactly. Yeah, he has patches. That way we as voters can see who owns these politicians.
That's a great idea.
Force them to wear NASCAR racing suits so that we know who owns them. We know who has contributed to them, and that way we can be informed voters when we go to the polls.
All right, we got 40 more minutes with him. He's not censored here. We'll continue getting into his powerful new book available at Infowars.com.